this seems like a very complicated process. So, out of sheer curiosity, how long would this process take?
This process could be anywhere. It depends, obviously, the size of the company and the industry. So it could be anywhere between 2, 3 months. It could be a half a year. It depends. I would say if you're a pharmaceutical company versus a retail company, it may vary because of the size of the company, the number of locations. So if you're buying a company that has operation in many countries, in many legal operational legal entities. So I'd say the bigger and the more complex the organization is, the more time it might take, a bit longer. But obviously, in those cases, the team, the due diligence team that will be assigned to the task is typically in proportion to what you're trying to buy. But long story short, I would say it could be anywhere between a 2 month period and it could be 6 months, 8 months. It depends again on complexity, geography, size, etc. So
Looking at it then, so would you say that there are three steps in a rollout process? The first would be all of this legal and planning, and then the third one would be the rollout. So the second step then, I assume, doesn't take very long. I'm assuming that's when the business signs on the dotted line.
yeah, the second step typically would be once the due diligence is completed, then there's a letter of intent that is being signed, which is some form of commitment to buy or to proceed with the transaction. So that triggers obviously negotiation, discussion about price, discussion about transition period, and so on. So this is a period of negotiation to finalize all the arrangement because it goes beyond obviously the amount of money that will be transacted. There's a money financial aspect, but beyond that, there's also other consideration other than money. So that's part of those discussion. That would be, I would say, this is the second part of the work, and this is typically, I would say, the period where the team, more specifically IT, will try to zoom in a bit more on the transition period because the third phase, which I'll describe in a minute, is what people call the day one. So once the transaction is agreed upon and signed, and you agree that you're going to buy this company December 1st, then there is the whole very intense amount of work to orchestrate and plan what we like to call the day one. So day one, meaning the day that you get officially the ownership of the company, the transaction is done, the money has been exchanged, and it's moving forward. Then there is a day one where this is the official day that you're the owner. So many things has to happen on a day one or could happen on a day one. And the simplest example I can give is email address. So if you're company A buying company B, basic question is the day of the announcement, the day one, again, do you want all the employees to run under the new email address, or you will let the company that you just purchased, you will let them use their current email address for a month, 2 months, and so on. So there's many key decisions that needs to be looked at, and decision has to be made. And there's not I would say there isn't one size fits all. There is some options that are, I would say, more easier to roll out and less complicated than others are. For other reason, you might want to go immediately on day one or a certain aspect. But the thing is, on day one, the company officially own what they just negotiated, and so there are certain things that needs to happen. So the day one, there will be a lot of activity focused on the day one milestone. And again, I mentioned about email. This is just one item of a very long list that needs to be considered for day one. So that requires planning, and That's, I would say, an important date or an important milestone in an M&A transaction cycle.
So just to be clear then, due diligence often refers to a company-wide examination of what is being done. But day one, you could, in theory, do even more planning, potentially.
Yeah, let me take this back a bit. So there's two types of planning, and what I just described, if I take a step back, there's a roadmap. What you need globally on a more global space is global scale is a roadmap, but your roadmap will pretty much have the first milestone in the roadmap will be day one. What do we need to do for the day that we take possession? But the roadmap will also have right after that needs to plan for the transition, other type of transition. And the perfect example I can give you is the ERP. So it's very unlikely that day one, both ERPs, the buyers and the one being purchased, will have merged their ERP. It almost never ever happened because this is a bigger time frame. It takes months, sometimes years to integrate ERPs, to integrate process. It's a major undertaking. So typically what would happen is the company that's being bought, they will keep running their ERP just like before for a certain time. And this is why it's a transition period. There might be an agreement with from the buyer that they will let the old ERP run for a certain amount of time. Could be 6 months, could be a year, could be more, but there is, at the end of the day, part of the roadmap, there has to be somewhat of a target date where the company that's being purchased will have decouple or decommission all of their systems and get on board with the system of the buyers. So that's why it's a transition. Not everything will happen overnight, but some components could be done, one at a time, but others like ERP, this is a task by itself to transfer from your own ERP to the buy. Typically, it takes more time and effort, and it's a bit more complicated. So this is again part of the transition. It's all part of the global roadmap, yeah, that has to be developed and prepared.